Protests are planned around the country today after P&O Ferries sparked outrage by sacking 800 members of staff on a Zoom call, saying they are replacing them with cheaper agency workers.
Hard to believe, isn't it? The staff were told yesterday would be their last day of work, but some crew defied orders and refused to leave their ships. Let's take a listen to their dismissal.
The company has made the decision that its vessels, going forward, will be primarily crewed by a third-party crew provider. Therefore, I am sorry to inform you that this means your employment is terminated with immediate effect on the grounds of redundancy. Your final day of employment is today.
Well, joining us now from Dover is travel expert Simon Calder. We also are joined by the Labour MP Karl Turner, where a sacked P&O ferry crew staged a protest by refusing to leave their ferry. And employment lawyer Rustam Tata joins us now as well. Simon, we have had a P&O statement this morning off the back of the news that they're waking up to and the outrage on all of the front pages. And they maintain that all the affected crew who worked today were notified face-to-face and in person on board their vessels. For the crew who were rostered off at P&O Ferries made all efforts to notify them personally. They held virtual meetings. They were all individually telephoned, emailed. They've sent SMS notifications before the dismissal letters and severance terms were shared via courier and email. For any crew members we did not reach personally, despite this, and they describe it as cascade of steps, regretfully, the news of their dismissal must have come as a shock, and we apologise for this.
So they issued something similar yesterday, didn't they? But they're still sticking by that today.
Yeah.
Have you any evidence at all that that happened from the people that you've spoken to, that there were face-to-face meetings, people did know in advance?
No, I mean, they were told, and we're going back really 24 hours here, and this was when I first started picking up, actually, from passengers who were trying to check in and suddenly found their ships weren't sailing. The staff were told, right, tie up the ships, leave the vessels and stand by for news. And certainly the people I've been talking to were just told, right, OK, there's an online meeting, and effectively, as you just played, you had one of the executives saying, sorry, that's your lot. You thought you had given years of service to this company, professional expertise, but you're out of work as from today. And yes, they have come up with some relatively better terms for severance than the law demands. Having said that, I think although this might be legal, and we'll find out in a moment whether it is or not, in the court of public opinion, there is just universal outrage at the way these professional men and women have been treated, because it's of course much more than just a job. It's a way of life. When you're on board a ship, you're working very hard, you're part of a kind of family. So the people who were told yesterday, oh, you're out of a job, they have just lost everything. They're devastated.
Well, look, someone who knows all about that is Labour MP Karl Turner in Hull. You come from a sort of seafaring family, don't you? And it was in Hull where some of these scenes that we've seen of people being effectively dragged off, trying to stage a sit-in and being dragged off. So what P&O is saying, that they arrange these sort of face-to-face meetings for those that weren't on work and they were notified. Have you any experience of that? What are your understanding of how it all happened?
Well, good morning to you, Kate. No, as far as I'm concerned, members of the RMT were notified by email at about 7 o'clock in the morning. I was contacted by the Assistant General Secretary of the RMT at about that time, saying that members of his union were receiving emails. People who lived in Hull and Dover and serviced those vessels were being told that there'd be a later announcement from P&O. They expected the news to be bad news, because they were instructed to leave the vessels, discharge any cargo, and make sure there was no passengers left on board. That was what made them suspicious. At 11:10, they were then told by a pre-recorded Zoom call that they were sacked with immediate effect. That's why people on that vessel yesterday morning in Hull were in a terrible state of emotion, panic, and devastation, and they were very angry. Some of these men and women have given their entire seafaring careers to P&O Ferries. They're expected to retire working for that business. One man was just crying to me, saying he's got 18 months left.
Oh.
And he's feeling utterly betrayed and devastated that they could do that to him. It was just raw emotion. People were very, very upset. There's lots.
Carly, it's heartbreaking to hear that testimonial. Let's come to Rustum, because maybe you can shed some light on the legal position. Firstly, can P&O Ferries do this? Can they just fire an entire staff like that?
Good morning, Ben. Well, the short answer is yes, they can. There are consequences. They're largely financial consequences, but there, as it were, consequence or remedy after the event. So in other words, if the question is there something that can stop an employer from behaving in that way, the answer generally is no.
But we do have laws here, don't we? We do have laws about how you treat people with their dismissal. I can see you nodding vigorously, Karl. I'm sure you've got views about what we want to do. But just sticking with you, Rustum, if we can for the moment. And there seems to be a bit of a loophole that it's registered in Guernsey, so therefore some of our laws don't apply. What do you know of this? And, of course, owned by a Dubai company. How do we unravel it and try and get help for those in this mess?
Yeah, well, you're right in that the law is unfortunately very complex and can be complex in situations like this. And there can be arguments and issues about the laws of which country will apply in certain circumstances, certainly where people are working overseas or on the seas, as in this case. But I think Simon Calder a few moments ago was talking about the court of public opinion. And I think what's going to happen here, there are two things. One is that court of public opinion is likely to be quite devastating towards P&O Ferries. And the other thing is I suspect that there will be now renewed pressure for there to be changes in the law. Yeah. That will take time, but changes in the law. And I have to say, I think it's the employers that try and play by the rules who will largely get the wrong end of it. So
the law changing is another thing, and we'll talk to James Heapy, who's the Minister on this morning, a little bit later on about that. But what about Karl's constituents that he was talking about there? You know, the men and the women that were on those ferries and were told, that's it, they're done, despite years and years of hard work for the business. What recourse do they have, Rustum, or is there nothing? Is it all just going to come out in redundancy payment?
Well, the recourse, unfortunately, the law overwhelmingly provides recourse or remedy in monetary terms. And there'll be a number of steps, and I'm afraid it's likely to take many months and probably even a year or more if P&O want to really kind of drag it out, because it'll have to go to employment tribunals, it'll go backwards and forwards. And that's, I'm sure, not very much comfort to those individuals that have lost their jobs with little or no notice. I mean, losing your job does happen. Of course, it's a fact of life. Redundancy does happen. And sometimes people will go into their job one day and come out that same day and find that they haven't lost their job. And as I say, the sanction then on the employer is largely a financial one, but it takes time and money and resource for people in order to actually pursue those claims. And as I say, overwhelmingly, those employers that try and do things perhaps more decently and reasonably, I think we'll be looking at this and saying, well, why do we bother behaving in that way? And that's why I say the political pressure will come to change the law.
Karl, you know, you've got the practical problem, haven't you, of trying to help those who live there, and I'm sure you're talking to the unions about the legalities and what you can do. Is there anything you can do in the short term, particularly with the fact that they've rehired people potentially with very little experience, we certainly not experienced at P&O, for a much cheaper rate?
Yeah, can I just make a point as well, Kay, if I may? Look, I was elected in 2010. I've banged on about this issue since I was elected. I was the Shadow Minister for Maritime for some time. And I made the issue about the fact that the national minimum wage doesn't apply on international routes. Right. So you've got two ships sailing out of Hull. You've got the Pride of Hull to Rotterdam. Incidentally, people in Hull are not very proud of that vessel right now, given what this business has done. And you've got its sister ship, the Pride of Rotterdam. Now, on the Pride of Rotterdam, she's crewed by Filipino crew and Portuguese. These men and women are exploited by that business, paid something in the order of about $3 an hour. Now, the government have allowed businesses like P&O to get away with that for years and years. Because, as I've said, the national minimum wage doesn't apply on international routes. Yeah. So that's one thing the government should be looking at dealing with. The second thing they can do is suspend any contracts they've got with P&O Ferries and DP World. This is a business owned in Dubai, by the state of Dubai, effectively. And we've still got contracts with that business. They should cancel them. This business has had, I think, £15 million from the British taxpayer during the pandemic to help them over the pandemic. That money should be clawed back immediately. And the government should legislate urgently to stop fire and rehire. Now, this isn't really fire and rehire because those men and women have not got the opportunity to apply for those jobs. It's fire and replace them with exploited foreign workers who, frankly, are on a couple of quid an hour. It's deplorable.
Well, look, we will put those points to the Minister who's joining us a little bit later on. You make them very passionately and clearly, Karl. Thank you for joining us. Thank you all as well, you know, for if you are a sort of one of those crew members that was told yesterday that your job is no longer tenable, then do get in touch with us. We'd love to know what your plans are, what the implication is for you as well, because as Karl was saying, that one member of the staff who had 18 months left before he was retiring, given his entire
Does that mean he's lost his pension? Or is it affected? Or is it going to be honoured?
Or will redundancy cover those things? You know, who knows?
Exactly, because, it's not traditional redundancy because you can't rehire at the same time. So many questions to unravel, and we'll speak to him about that a little bit later on.